Sunday, March 31st, 4 p.m. Mountain Time, 2019. Guys, in this video, we're going to talk about fires, floods, and the food chain. First, a wildfire burning in New Jersey. Article dated March 30th, 2019 from JerseyShoreOnline.com. Talks about a large wildfire in the Penn State Forest of Burlington County. If we go to that area here at the College of DuPage website, we look at the visible loop. You can see the wildfire burning last night overnight. And when you can see it on here, you know it is a large fire. It is visible from space. Here's a look at it from the ground. Here's another close-up image of this wildfire that right now they have no idea how this thing even started. This is another article from BurlingtonCountyTimes.com where the fire happens to be burning. At the time of this article, which is dated March 30th, 2019, which was yesterday, it had burned nearly 2,000 acres. I'm sure it's well above that. No homes were in immediate danger at the time. The voluntary evacuations were in place. A couple of roads were closed just as precautionary measures. But as of right now, they're saying they don't know what caused the fire, and it was not a controlled burn. So once again, here's the location of Penn State Forest right here. If you line it up with the satellite loop, same exact spot. That's the fire from space. Now the floods. The flooding in the Midwest, which is the heartland of the farm community in the United States. That's where the majority of the grain comes from that is shipped to the international community. And a major artery that is responsible for shipping that grain to the international community is the Mississippi River. And we're going to talk about that here in just a minute. But first, I'm in the South Dakota area, and you can see all of these purple icons right there. Those are major flooding events going on right now as I do this video. The reds are on their way to major, but may not quite make it to, well, in fact, some of them will make it to major flood stage. Some record-setting stage, that right there in Minnesota, that's the Minnesota River near Morton, Minnesota. Just barely under flood stage today and into tomorrow. And then slowly over the course of a week going down to moderate. But you got to keep in mind, moderate is still flooding. Major is kind of a big deal. In the Dakota area, and even this is applicable to any area that's flooding, but they're talking about the South Dakota area with regard to wells and drinking water. And they're saying in South Dakota that an estimated 11,900 wells could be potentially contaminated from the floodwaters. I used to live in this area years ago and lived on a well. I never dealt with any flooding, but I understand what they're talking about with regard to surface water seeping into your well water, which is fed by underground water. So surface water is going to contain contaminants, whether it's from a road or maybe a field that has runoff, just a variety of things on the ground that you don't necessarily want getting into the groundwater that's pumped up into your well system for your home. A lot of those wells, and I know the one that I was on, was a good clean well. I could drink that water. It was actually a very good tasting water. However, flooding can contaminate the wells, so a variety of different things could be getting into these wells. It's just another thing compounding the situation. So if you're in those areas, that's one thing to consider, especially if your area has been flooded for a long period of time. That's going to increase the odds of your well becoming contaminated with a variety of different contaminants. It could be a number of things. Not only your drinking water, but now we're also dealing with the possibility of a food shortage. And you can see here a grain bin that held at one time, I think it said 850,000 bushels of grain. That's a lot of grain, guys. And this has happened not only once, but 5 times now throughout the Midwest. In Iowa, different parts of Missouri, grain bins have collapsed. And that's a total loss. What those grain bins are doing, I grew up around those grain bins. That grain, in some cases, not all, is sold on the international market well ahead of time. Let's say that grain was sold many months ago. It sits in these silos once it's harvested and it's drying. You can't take grain down. What they do, they take it to the Mississippi River. If the Mississippi River is either flooded or doesn't have enough water to transport the grain to the Gulf of Mexico, where it's loaded onto larger ships and then transported overseas to the international market. But the grain cannot be delivered wet. They're not going to pay for wet grain. They're going to pay for grain, but it has to be dry. And the drier the grain, the better quality of the grain, the less moisture the grain, the more yield or the more money the farmer makes. You know, this here is a complete loss. That's a complete loss. And they said that nearly 850,000 bushels in one grain bin was lost. Well, you take that times 5, and you're talking several million bushels that aren't going to make it to the market and that can't be replaced. So yeah, that's going to put a weak link in the food chain. It's not going to necessarily disrupt it entirely, but that's not good. You lose millions of bushels of grain that's already been sold. That's not a good scenario. Once again, that can't be replaced. There are many examples of that occurring up and down these flooded arteries along the Mississippi River, in the Mississippi River Valley, the Ohio River Valley, all through the Corn Belt, basically, of the United States, the Great Plains, dealing with a big flood right now. Nebraska, Kansas, all along this Mississippi River, the more snow that melts and the ice that comes off these rivers, it's going to all go into the Mississippi. Remember last year or a couple of years ago, the Mississippi River was so dry they couldn't get barges down the Mississippi River to deliver the grain. Now this year, the river could be too high in some cases. More than likely it won't be, because you can work around, you can dredge and do different things to, if it's not too severe. But when it's too dry and there's no water in the Mississippi River in places, you can't get barges through there, then you cannot get the grain to the international communities. I'm not saying that that's the case right now, but it could possibly lead to that. Massive wildfire in New Jersey, we just talked about that. That wildfire might get some help from a nor'easter coming up this week. There's talk about the possibility of a large system moving up the east coast of the United States. I've looked it over, and there is a storm that's going to be brewing off the coast of the Carolinas starting tonight into, actually tomorrow night into Tuesday. You see that low pressure system right there? Well, that's going to go up the east coast. It may or may not impact the New Jersey, New York, New England area sometime on Wednesday, quite possibly on Thursday. Right now, all of the models are showing that system, and you can see it right there, reaching 990 in some cases, 986. Just depends on which model you use. Central low pressure, which is a strong storm. If that storm goes to the left, then yes, New Jersey, the New England states will see rain in most cases. The elevations might see some snow, but highly unlikely. But here's what's going to push this storm offshore. You're looking at the jet stream on Wednesday, and that's pushing that system offshore. So more than likely right here, this system is going to stay to the right and drift off into the North Atlantic, more than likely not impacting the east coast of the United States. And here it is on Wednesday, April 3rd at windy.com, and you can see when it's parallel New Jersey on Wednesday, it's offshore. They may see some light rain, some high winds. I mean, you're talking 95 mile an hour winds around the central low pressure system offshore, but not onshore. So more than likely this system will not impact the upper northeast of the United States, but there's always that chance that it could. Forecasts can and will change, but right now, the way that jet stream is, it's more than likely not going to. So, but we're going to keep an eye on it. Flooding across the northern hemisphere in a variety of locations. Torrential rains continue in Iraq and Iran. There's rain in or flooding in Winnipeg, Canada. They're saying 123 properties at risk from the, I think it's the Red River that may be flooding here soon. They're comparing it to possibly the flood of 2009. Not quite as bad, but pretty close. There's also flooding in Syria, Turkey, several different locations across the northern hemisphere of the United States, and we are just getting started in spring in the northern hemisphere. So look for the possibility of a nor'easter that might bring some help to this massive wildfire burning in New Jersey, but right now it kind of looks like the nor'easter is going to stay just off of the coast, but we'll definitely keep a close eye on it. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a super day and be safe out there.